Hi, this is Dick Ojakangas, Professor Emeritus, Department of Earth and Environmental Sciences, University of Minnesota, Duluth. This is part one of 5 parts on Earth's energy resources and the global warming crisis. Why didn't I call it climate change, Earth's energy resources and climate change? Because virtually all of the climatic changes that we hear about every day are due to warming, global warming. Okay. The topics in this talk are in 5 parts. Part 1, the history of fossil fuels. Part 2 is evidence that it's caused by humans. Part 3 is about temperature increases, what it happens to our environment. Part 4 is alternative energy renewal. What can we do with alternative energy? Part 5 is the International Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Science versus alternative facts. Is America going to be a leader or not? Okay, let's move on. I hope you're all eyes and ears because this is very important material. The future of our Earth actually depends on many of these things we're going to be speaking about. So keep your eyes and your ears open, okay? Okay. Earth's first modern energy resource was whale oil. This is from a talk I give on the whaling industry. There she blows. There are whales, 26 different species. 8 large species are still endangered because of the whaling industry. They look at the whalers went for the large whales, the most blubber to render into oil. Blue whale, 300,000 pounds, 100 feet long, compared to a brontosaurus and elephant. Blue whale is the largest animal on Earth ever. Okay, this is a slide of the 19th century whaling grounds. The whalers said no one owns the whales, so kill, kill, kill. They really went all over the world, except you notice they aren't in Antarctica yet. They aren't at the bottom of the map. Whaling was a very dangerous profession, as you can see here. Many whalers lost their lives. By the 1850s, big whales became rare. So whalers hit the elephant seals, literally hit them. The whalers became sealers. See them clubbing the whales. Or the seals, the big seals weighed up to a ton. Penguins were next. Macquarie Island, south of New Zealand. 3 million kings and royal penguins, 2,000 at a time, were walked the plank right into the digesting vat. Falkland Islands, 1867. They killed 450,000 kings. 16 years, they killed 2.5 million. How much oil do they get from each of these bigger penguins? 1 pint. Whales were saved, so to speak, by crude oil. Here we see production of whale oil on the left going up to a peak in about 1850. And then it starts going down. And the red line is crude oil that was discovered in 1859. But whaling was continuing yet again. In 1904, the southern ocean of Antarctica was discovered by whalers. They killed 118,159 whales in 19 years. Harvest in 1 year was 46,000 whales. How many whales were killed worldwide just from 1900 to 2000? 2.7 million. It's a lot of whales. However, in 1984, the IWC, International Whaling Commission, outlawed whaling. And Japan dropped out of the group because of that, because they killed 330 minke whales each year for, quote, scientific reasons. And Norway still whales some. Russia probably still does. Iceland just stopped, I think. Anyway, whaling was really something. And that's soon too much petroleum. What's it good for besides lighting and lubrication? Then a new use appear, the automobile. These are just a few of the more than 2,300 different automobile manufacturers in the USA. But there are only 125 of them after 1918. I don't know how many there are now, just a dozen, I suppose, at the most. Here's the old Model T Ford, 1908 to 1927. The Tin Lizzie, 45 miles per hour, 19 miles per gallon, two-speed transmission. I was in love with one of these things when I got my driver's license at the age of 16. I could have bought one of these for $50. Trouble is, it didn't have a top, it didn't have floorboards, didn't even have brakes. But my parents said no. It's probably the only reason I'm still here today. Henry Ford came up with the Model T, of course. And Henry Ford really was the first one who had mass manufacturing production line. And he really made America in many ways. He made the manufacturing industry, because what he did was, what he decided is he wanted his workers to be able to afford their product, the cars. And so in the early 1900s, there in the early production of the Model T, some workers could buy a Model T for $250. And meanwhile, the workers were working out 5-day work week, 8 hours a day, and so on. Fortune magazine said that Henry Ford was the manufacturer of the 1900s, the great entrepreneur of the 1900s. When he got these cars on the road, many of them and so on, they had to build highways, they had to build new cities, everything practically. He was the real entrepreneur. A few more cars, I could show you 100 of them if you wanted. The Whippet here, my grandparents had a Whippet. Grandma and Grandpa Ojakangas had one of these in 1929. They only manufactured the Whippet for 4 years. Look at this, 16 cylinders under that hood. Wouldn't that be great? Finally, we're looking more modern. Here's the Chevy Bel Air. Minivans, SUVs. How many of you would take your SUV to a place like that? And the Hummer, at 9 miles per gallon, it easily cut the distance between gas stations in half. You know, well, I'm going to tell you a story that I forgot here. Here are tractors, semi-tractors, a couple million of them in the USA. Most of them, 75%, are diesels, which are really bad polluters. The tank holds 300 gallons, 7 miles per gallon, that's 2,100 miles on a tank. Drivers, many of them have cabs they sleep in and everything. They can really cover distance. Skipping along, here's China, traffic jam, 150 miles long, both ways, in 212. That was a few years ago. In 2017, they had 300.3 million automobiles. A license costs $5,000. They had lotteries and auctions to get licenses. Any auto older than 5 years was scrapped. The world has 1.2 billion autos and trucks now. In 2018 alone, 3.9 million new autos were added. In case you're wondering where they're coming from, China, Japan, and Germany are the top three. USA, South Korea, India, the next three. A bunch of others. Enjoy your new car. It runs on gasoline derived from oil, fossil fuel, so it pollutes. How does polluting fossil fuel, oil, natural gas, and coal form? A fossil fuel is solar energy stored by organisms in ancient times over spans of up to several million years. Each is a one-time gift, with most discovered in the last few hundred years. And remember, of course, we had political problems in the Mideast because of oil. And in 1998, 99, when Bush Sr. was president, we went into the oil states. And this was something that came out and kind of kicks, I thought. We shall not exonerate Saddam Hussein for his act. We will mobilize to meet this threat of vital interest in the Persian Gulf until an amicable solution is reached. Our best strategy is to be prepared. Failing that, we are coming to kiss your ass. 2004, we were back there again. Iraq, Baghdad. Ministry of Oil was the only ministry we protected. We didn't worry about archaeology or anything like that. We just protected the oil ministry because of oil. I think that's why we were there in the last place and the first place. U.S. was running out of oil in the late 90s, early 2000s. We were down to a 2.5 year supply of oil. There are many good books coming out, The Oil Factor, The End of Oil, et cetera, et cetera. And Hubbard's Peak was well known. DeFaze from Princeton wrote a book called Hubbard's Peak. The 100-year period when most of the world's oil will be produced is known as Hubbard's Peak. On this scale, the geologic time needed to form the oil resource can be visualized by extending this line 5 miles to the left, 5 miles at this scale, showing how long it takes to form oil and so on. We were worried about world peak oil because we were running out. Remember, we were down to 2.5 years supply. People were saying 210 or so would be it. What'd you do with all that oil anyway? Did you use it up tooling around in vehicles? Your generation didn't even think about us guys. We were importing oil. 1973, 33%. By 2003, 2/3 oil. 2008, we were short on oil. And National Geographic had an interesting article. Just wait, you've heard it before, but this time it's for real. It's the beginning of the end of cheap oil. It's going to be expensive now. This is an world oil map in 1972. Where's the oil? In the Middle East. Middle East is controlling it. Hey, it's only money, Sam, baby. Here's a world oil map today. Almost the same, except more of the oil, 66% on that high red line to the left comes from the Middle East. Some of the places have changed position a bit, but still that's where it is. Well, most oil is in spaces between sand grains in sandstones or in holes in carbonate. Generally only get about a third of the oil without secondary recovery method, adding water, steam, and chemicals. That's oil. So an oil field is not a big underground pool of oil. An oil field is in sand, for example, shown here. Now, some of those dark oil spots are connected. Some are isolated in 2 dimensions. That's why not all of it comes out. To get a good oil field, you need a source rock, which is black organic mud, burial to 15,000 feet to cook, reservoir rock, a porous impermeable sand or limestone, and a trap, an impermeable cap rock, which is usually shale. Here's some structural traps. Anticline in the upper left, fault in the upper right, salt dome in lower left. Those 3 all have some kind of a surface expression. But lower right, there's oil down there with no surface expression. So, anyway, here are the oil imports again by year. Notice in 73 we're importing a little bit of oil. Then we were importing a lot of it for 10 years or so. And then it started to go down again. 42%, 34, 19%, 2018. Why are they decreasing? Because U.S. oil, we found fracking and horizontal drilling. Fracking, hydraulic fracturing of shale beds using water under very high pressure. It's been big since 2012 for gas and oil. There are bad aspects and there are good aspects to it. Fracking creates fissures or cracks in shale as far as 10,000 feet from the well in several directions. And notice they're able to drill a vertical hole and then divert it horizontally. And then putting water at very high pressure that cracks the rock. And they have to put sand in to try to keep those cracks open. So they put in a mixture of water, sand, and chemical agents down into the horizontal wells. Then they pump it back out. Here's an example. Well, Bakken Formation is a shale play for fracking. All of those red areas and yellow areas are places in the U.S. where oil and gas is can be obtained by fracking. North Dakota, we've highlighted the Bakken Formation there. North Dakota is now number 2 petroleum producer in the U.S. after Texas. Example, Bakken Formation. 2018, they had 14,457 wells, 40,000 more projected. Each of those little black dots there is an oil well or oil and gas well. They add chemicals to the water, 14 chemicals, maybe 100 even in some cases. They pump water down in the drilling process. 2 to 8 million gallons of water used per well. Most comes up with oil and gas as wastewater and is injected into deeper disposal wells. The guy on top there saying we could tell you what's in it, then we'd have to let it kill you. Secret sauces. Earthquakes caused by wastewater disposal were first noted in Denver in the 1960s. Notice the top one shows earthquake frequency, and the bottom one shows when wastewater was injected. This was into armament production. It wasn't oil, but it showed very clearly that when they put in the water, they got earthquakes, and when they stopped, a few earthquakes started again, and they had more earthquakes. So these are one of the problems of fracking. Number one is earthquakes occur at wastewater disposal wells. Those red areas, there are places where there are earthquakes related to disposing of water. The chemical contamination of water and air can cause various medical problems. The one we hear most about, of course, is the earthquake. Now, Oklahoma there has more earthquakes per year than California, 5,000 a year. Where are the world's oil reserves today? 2018, 2019, 2020, it hasn't changed. Venezuela is number one. Saudi Arabia number two. Canada 3. USA is number 10. The world uses 36.4 billion barrels today. What are total world reserves? To 2,000 billion barrels. We're not going to run out of oil we're never going to run out of oil. Since 1918, U.S. is the world's top producer of oil and natural gas. Why? Fracking. Do we put our head in the sand about fracking, or do we utilize it? Oil is geopolitics worldwide. Oil means geopolitics everywhere. Okay, a little bit more about that third major energy problem, coal. Coal comes from plants growing in anoxic swamps. No oxygen there, they do not decay, accumulate to form peat. If buried deeply, the heat and pressure transform the peat into coal. Most coal formed between 350 to 300 million years. MA stands for million years ago. Some is as young as 50 million. U.S. has a lot of coal. 29% of the world's coal. The world must face the question, can coal ever be clean? Because coal produces twice as much contamination as natural gas. And there's mountaintop coal mining in Pennsylvania. Rocks 310 to 300 million years old. Anthracite, that's the high-grade coal. Literally knocking the tops off of mountains in the Appalachian. Lower left diagram, you can see how high that mountain was before they knocked it off. And then the dirt goes down into the valleys and clogs them and so on. The younger coal, 65 to 55 million years, Wyoming coal, Paleocene age, open pit mining, lower grade but tremendous quantities of coal. Coal is the big fossil polluter. And Trump, of course, President Trump digs coal. Last word on coal. Cost of gas produced energy is less than half of coal produced energy. It has half its carbon dioxide. That's good. US, 1/3 of its 600 coal will be gone in 20 years. Coal use has already decreased 50% since 2005. That's good. Bad news is U.S. has subsidized mining, especially by President Trump now, have eliminated regulations which have caused 12-time pollution increase. U.S. exports coal to China and India. World air circulates, of course, so pollutes all of us. It's bad. Global warming. However, as we all know, burning fossil fuel causes global warming. Next, please go to part 2 of this 5-part PowerPoint presentation on Earth's energy resources and the global warming crisis. Part 2 provides the evidence that global warming is caused by humans, anthropomorphic. Humans produce CO2, methane, and nitrous oxide. Thank you very much.